Welcome to the very first video on the Glorify the Good YouTube channel. My name is Maurice, and I'm here to be your guide as we discuss all things related to virtue. So you might be asking, why are we here in the first place? Shout out to you for clicking on this video and that curiosity to be here. I really appreciate that. Thank you. But back to the business. Virtue, right? Drop a comment down below and let me know what virtue means to you. I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts as I share my own, right? And I might even feature one of your comments in a future video. So just drop it down below and I'll get right back to you guys, all right? So, and also I got some notes here, so bear with me, all right? So what is virtue? Virtue is about living with integrity and making the right choices no matter who is watching, right? I believe that wisdom is often found in the ancients, those people who came before us and built the foundation for the society that we currently live in, whether it's, ancient philosophers, religious leaders and such. A lot of people who have paved the way for our modern day society. I think that we can glean on them for insights into how we should conduct ourselves and carry ourselves forward, right? So before I move on, let me just say, I think in today's society, we've sort of moved away from some of these ancient tenets, right? I feel like society nowadays glorifies all things that are bad, and in a way, the society almost promotes these things. If you look at social media, right? If you're a guy, you might get all types of beautiful women on your For You page, or in your algorithm, you'll see lots of beautiful women pop up. And while it's great to admire beauty, for a lot of people, it can lead to self-destructive behaviors. So I just want to provide some insights on how we should be moving away from these things and towards other things. If you're a sports fan like me, the prominence and the rise of gambling over the years, obviously, that can lead to many issues for not only an individual, but for their families as well. Drugs, alcohol, all these types of things are constantly being pushed down our throats almost, So it's not really good. It's not good at all. Let's discuss what virtue really is. So I want to glean on the insights from those ancient people that I mentioned before, and I want to discuss the 7 virtues. So I've got all of them listed out here. One by one, we'll go through each of them, provide a brief description and such, and then I'll contrast these with the 7 deadly sins. So I feel like most people have probably heard more about the 7 deadly sins than they have the 7 virtues. If you look at Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, I'm like pretty sure that those 7 doors are embodiments of the 7 deadly sins, right? So we've got chastity contrasted with lust. So chastity is about purity, self-control, and maintaining respectful relationships, while lust is about the objectification of others and indulgence in selfish desires, right? So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, and that goes back to that idea that I mentioned with the beautiful women on your timeline and things like that. There's a balance in everything, right? And speaking of balance, that leads me to the second one, which is temperance. Temperance refers to moderation and self-restraint, not overindulging in any one thing. So that's contrasted with gluttony, right? Best example I can think of is you overeat, right? You or you have a craving for some food to the point where you overeat. That's just basic, excessive consumption. That's another one you might see with alcohol too. Um, so actually, when we think about alcohol, I believe there was a temperance movement back in the 20th century, early 1900s or so, where folks were promoting the idea of, I think it's less alcohol. And then that possibly led to the Prohibition movement, which was the outright banning of alcohol in the United States. Somebody in the comments, let me know, the historical accuracy of that. You guys can probably, clear that and, provide more context on that one. But moving on to number three. Number three, charity. Charity is about selfless love and generosity, putting others' needs before their own, right? And that's contrasted with greed, which is materialism, right? So that's one I feel like everybody can relate to, right? You see on social media the prominence of certain brands. The advertising is crazy. Everybody's pursuing Jordans, right? That's a big one in my community. Everybody's looking to get the latest shoe, and that can cause issues. We've seen numerous stories about people fighting over, spots in line, waiting for the next pair of Jordans and things like that. It's a whole can of worms that I can open on that one. Moving on to number 4, diligence. Diligence refers to hard work, right? In order to achieve any end in life, you must put in effort. You must put in hard work. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure we've all had people in our lives, whether it's our parents, our teachers, whoever, right? They've tried to instill diligence in us. And I think, out of all of these, I think most people probably have a good sense of diligence, I'm a millennial, and oftentimes they try to say millennials are lazy, but I think we're pretty savvy and resourceful, and that might get looked at as laziness by the other generations, but they just don't understand us. That's a whole nother story. I can talk about that another time in another video. So diligence is contrasted with sloth. So a sloth is literally an animal that just hangs out in a tree all day and just eats, gluttony. Just eats and does whatever he needs to do. He's a sleepy guy. That just refers to laziness, right? So I think that's a pretty self-explanatory one. Moving on to number 5. Number 5 is patience. It's the ability to endure difficult situations without getting angry or frustrated, contrasted with wrath. Say you're driving on the highway and you're in traffic, or somebody cuts you off, traffic's moving slowly. Either scenario could work, right? Your patience will definitely be tested, but I think a lot of us in those scenarios, we probably succumb to the opposite of that, which is wrath or rage, right? So that's just an intense, violent reaction to perceived wrongs, often leading to destructive actions, right? We've heard of road rage, people acting out of character because some type of slight, some type of inconvenience that they're experiencing, right? Nobody's perfect. And I think with all of these, nobody's ever gonna fully embody all 7 of these traits. But the goal of Glorify the Good is to, you probably have heard the phrase "a more perfect union" in reference to like the Constitution and things like that. So you can think of Glorify the Good as creating a more perfect person. So moving on to number 6, we're talking about kindness. That's pretty self-explanatory, but that's just being compassionate towards others and, showing mutual respect and dignity. Um, Contrast that with envy, which is a feeling of resentment towards others' successes or happiness. And it's just, jealousy. You're wanting what somebody else has, right? Moving on to number 7, humility. Humility is recognizing your place in the world and being modest about your strengths. And that's contrasted with pride, which is a form of arrogance and feeling self-important or that you're better than others, right? We're all the same. We all bleed the same. We all cry the same. We're all humans, right? So to think that you're better than somebody because of the things that you might have, right? Materialism. Contrast that with one of these. Damn, which one is it? Charity. Yeah, that makes sense. I probably should just write these down. Let me do that really quickly. I'm gonna write these ones down so that you guys can understand. So chastity is contrasted with lust. Temperance is contrasted with gluttony. Charity, greed. Diligence, sloth. Patience, wrath. Kindness, envy. And then humility contrasted with pride. Then I'll just write here, deadly sins. All right, cool. So now we have a nice visual reminder of what we should be striving towards and what we should be trying to avoid. All right. So let me know in the comments which of these, if any, probably at least one, because like I said, none of us are perfect. Let me know which of these that you're struggling with the most. I can think about for myself, one is my patience, Patience, definitely something you struggle with, especially when you're navigating relationships, whether they be at home, at work, with friends. That's a big one for me. And then another one I would say, probably temperance, finding and striking a balance between, these behaviors that I guess, these dopamine-based behaviors, right? Dopamine is your reward system, right? So if you eat a certain type of food, it causes a dopamine spike. If you, engage in some type of activity, it provides a dopamine spike. So I think for me, I definitely temperance and patience for sure, big sticking points. So yeah, let me know what you're struggling with, and we can work on, stemming that tide and helping you figure things out, right? So why is it important to chase virtue? Like I said, it's not just a one-time sort of thing. It's a journey. So life is about constantly moving towards being better and doing better. So with acknowledging these behaviors, these traits, we can sort of create a roadmap for becoming better, virtuous human beings. And, we can commit to that growth by working together, acknowledging our flaws and our strengths, and trying to be a little bit better every day, right? So let me talk a little bit more about glorify the good and why we're here, right? So, like I mentioned before, society seems to be glorifying these negative behaviors, these negative traits, and I don't think that those are productive nor positive for anybody. It's great to, go out. It's actually New Year's Eve today. Let's see what time. It's 11:19 p.m. here on the East Coast in the United States, here in New York City. So yeah, there's a lot of people out tonight. Gonna be partying, drinking, things like that. Now that's all fun and all, but we've heard plenty times about incidents happening on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, where folks are gluttonous, they overconsume, then that leads to, it's unfortunate to say, but it's a reality and we have to acknowledge that. One thing, just to set it aside real quick, one thing that we have to acknowledge when it comes to positivity, right? We also have to acknowledge the negative. In order for, your electronics to run, there's a positive electrical charge and then there's a negative electrical charge, and you got to orient the batteries to hit each accordingly, and you get what I'm saying, right? So to go back to that example, unfortunately, certain things do happen when we're gluttonous. So it is what it is. Society promotes, in college especially, this was a big thing, the party lifestyle, the clubbing lifestyle. And while it's fun to go out and dance and listen to music, we just have to try to strike a nice balance between the two. That way we don't cause harm to ourselves and to other people, right? So like I said, on this side, we've got glorify the good, and on that side, we've got, for lack of a better phrase, let's say glorify the bad. So what we're trying to do on this channel is, like I said, shine a light on all things positive so that we can work towards being more positive and living a more virtuous life and trying to avoid these negative traits, because, nothing really good comes from this. I think if any of these, I would say, we often hear the phrase taking pride in one's work. So, that's a little bit different than the pride that we're referring to in this. So none of these are good. Literally none of these are good. Greed, you might think getting resources for your family, perhaps. That one's a little bit more nuanced. I'll say pride and greed, But like I said, if you want me to discuss these further in another video, let me know and I can work on, refining things and putting out something better for you. So like I said, this channel, we're here to just promote growth and positivity. And what can you guys expect from me moving forward? I don't have the channel's plan fully mapped out yet, but I do know what I want it to be about in the sense of our virtues, what we stand for, right? So I want to really build a community where you and I and others alike can discuss how all of these have impacted our lives. I think the biggest thing with social media is it can be good and bad, right? As with anything. But I think we've got to move towards using it in ways that will edify us as opposed to ways that will distract us, right? The mindless scrolling, whether it's, looking at Facebook posts. Do people still use Facebook? Instagram, TikTok, that's a big one, to the point where, well, that's another story, but TikTok might get banned in 2025, which is 35 minutes away. Yeah, so like I said, there's all of these bad things and good things in society, and we got to strike a balance between the two so that we can become better human beings, self-develop, and we've got to use social media to build ourselves up as opposed to, like I said, the mindless scrolling. We're drawing a line between what's truly important, virtues, versus the things that don't have any real value. I think it's problematic when we don't stand for anything, right? It's like you've got to have a code to live by. So virtue provides that for us as opposed to a neutral, right? I think there's a quote, I don't know who said it, but there's something about, was it MLK? That'd be awful if it's MLK and I don't know if it's MLK, if I'm not certain that it's MLK. But it's like, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything, or you'll fall for anything. So either way, that quote in itself speaks volumes about everything that I've been trying to convey to you guys. So, like I said, we're here to encourage people to step away from the negative influences and embrace the positive, So let me know in the comments, how are you embodying virtue in your life? And if you want to be vulnerable too, vulnerability is key, because we're not going to grow if we don't acknowledge our deficits. So if you want to let me know any of these that you're struggling with too, I'll let you know what I'm struggling with. Greed, you feel like you got to make money in this life, so this is a big one. I said I struggle with patience, right? So therefore, wrath, I struggle with that one too, right? Letting minor inconveniences annoy you. That's a big thing, but you think about it, it's like, was it really that serious, man? Like, are you gonna die, bro? Because, XYZ thing inconvenienced you for a little bit of time? Stuff like that. Lust, I think this is a big one too, especially nowadays with all of the different distractions and such that exist in society. So, like I said, folks, it was great to speak to you about why we're here and what we're about. So if you can share a comment, hit that subscribe button, that bell, so you can get the notifications. Share this video with a friend. I'd love to hear from you guys, and let's keep on chasing virtue. Thank you.